Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Circle of the World podcast, where we discuss Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. I am one of your hosts, Lord Chamberlain Jeffrey, and here are my co-hosts,
Archlector George,
and Harrison, the Adeptus Historical.
We continue our coverage of Last Argument of Kings, the third book in the original trilogy. And for this episode, we'll be covering Good Men, Evil Men, and Not What You Wanted. So, let's get started. As usual, we like to thank you all for your support. And
thank you.
And we like to remind you to follow us on social media and our YouTube page and all that jazz. But by the time this recording will have been released, you'll have noticed that we are actually doing a giveaway.
Yay!
So we're giving away a signed, numbered copy of The Great Change and Other Lies. And all you have to do to enter this wonderful giveaway is just go on our social media and share our posts. All of them. Share them. And every single one, no matter what platform you've got, is a chance to win. Just make sure that you send us an email or make a comment with hashtag COTW giveaway.
And make sure you tag our account as well, just so we can see it as well, because sometimes the hashtags are a little funky, especially on Instagram. And and if you're going to send us an email outlining one of your favorite segments or little outbursts that we've had over the many episodes we've released so far. Since, not everyone has social media, we had to remember today.
Yeah, I appreciate that as well, because I don't have social media either, so it's good to have a little extra avenue there.
Yep. So the giveaway will run till about the 8th of December, and we will announce the winner on the 15th, and then that person should receive the book right around Christmas time. So a nice little early Christmas gift for you all. And, well, not for you all, for one person.
One of you, the chosen one.
The chosen one. We need to assess all of your qualities to ensure you are patriotic, loyal listeners. And so just go ahead and participate. Share our posts, tag us, and use the hashtag COTW giveaway. And, let the games begin. Every man for himself. That kind of thing. Right?
Yeah, may the odds be ever in your favor.
Yeah, all that jazz. So
just be realistic.
Yeah, it's good to be realistic.
You're probably not going to win.
Yeah, it's just one person. Although, since it's basically 35 listeners,
still probably not going to win.
Somebody
is going to win, and I hope they actually post it on their social media, because otherwise this whole thing has just been a waste of time.
We do it for the love of the game, gents. That's what it is.
Exactly. We do this for you guys, We love doing this stuff for you guys, and that's why we bought this book, so that somebody that wouldn't normally buy this kind of book gets to have one.
Exactly. All right. So let's move on to our first segment, which will be Best Meme of the Week. George, you want to take it away?
Guys, can you believe it?
Tam O'Bor?
It's Tam O'Bor again. I think it's actually quite suiting to the end of the podcast, or not the end of the podcast, but the end of the first trilogy here, that Tam O'Bor has come back in force. He's like last week's one, this week's one. Hopefully he'll have next week's one as well. So this is a picture of Jesse and Walt from Breaking Bad shaking hands on the rooftop, and it's First Law fans deciding that Leo is worse than a genocidal wizard for some reason.
That's funny.
I think that just suits perfectly, and I think that is actually a custom meme there from Tam O'Bor. That's no template, that.
Yeah, I think that is a unique, an original, as they say.
That's an original Tam O'Bor. I'll put that on my wall. It'll be worth 10 grand one day.
And also as a reminder to all those who like memes, that the House of the Meme Maker is doing meming every chapter for Best Served Cold, right around the time that we're going to be starting Best Served Cold as well. So you push it off for us and everything. So if that's something you guys like to do, would like to be a part of, make sure to get on board with that. And message Will on House of the Meme Maker at Sir Spaceman.
Yep. Will, our friend, is the overlord of that subreddit, and if you haven't been there yet, you should join and post some shit posts. Do all that jazz. Well, thank you for that, George. Let's move on to our first chapter read through, Good Men, Evil Men, and we start off with the perspective of the Dog Man, and he's just standing out by Grimm's recently dug buried grave, and he is pretty despondent. Right, meow. Right, he's just thinking about the long journey the last couple years, and how just basically started. It started nowhere, and it basically ended nowhere. And he's lost a lot of friends. He goes over it. He's thought about Harding Grim, told Duru Thunderhead, 3 trees, Forley the weakest, who Harrison apparently does not like for some reason, and
He's weak.
It's in his name, God damn it! You're supposed to know and accept that. And he's like, what was it for, right? It was just all waste. It would make anyone, and at least in his mind, make anyone despair. Even somebody that doesn't really have like a temper, or let's just say a high octane personality. The futility of everything is gnawing at Dogman, it seems.
I mean, we've seen Dogman go from being surrounded by all these colourful characters to they've all either died or they've split off to do something else, or they're Logan.
or they're Logan.
Yeah, very true.
So no wonder he feels alone.
No, yeah, it makes sense, right? And speaking of which, as Dogman's just standing in the rain, he hears footsteps, turns to look, and who else is it but like our boy? It's Logan, just walking.
Speak of the devil.
Whistling, singing in the rain, and Dogman goes, "Oh, the king of the Northmen, the bloody 9. Well, how's the day going?" And Logan says that it's getting, it's raining, it's getting wet, and then Dogman's like, "Yep, it's winters come, quicker and quicker, each passing year," and then So Logan's like, "Yep, it's guess it's time. I get back to the north. Calder and Scale, they're probably still loose and causing mayhem and whatnot. And who knows what Black Dow's getting up to, So we should probably be leaving soon." Dogman's like, "Can't wait. We should leave already." And then Logan straight up tells him that he wants him to stay.
He wants him to be sort of liaison to the Union.
Yep. Yeah, Logan's reasoning is that somebody needs to talk to them, and that Dogman's been the best man that he knew at talking, besides maybe Bethod, but we know where Bethod is right now, and
in the mud.
and he wants Dogman to kind of strike up a deal, an alliance of sorts, maybe with certain conditions and terms, that the Union will have, Logan's back as King of the Northmen, just because, not every Northman likes having a king, and not every Northman likes having Logan specifically as a king. So the Union being allied with them, with Logan, would help his rule, his reign. And then Logan also told him that it wouldn't hurt if he brought some weapons back, and Dogman's like, "Weapons?" And then Logan's like, "Well, it's better to have them and not need them, but to need them." And Dogman's like, "All right, yeah, I get it. But what happens to just this one more fight, and then we're done? What happened to making things grow?" And Logan's like, they might have to grow without us for now. Like, listen, I like how Logan says, "Look, I never looked for a fight. You know that, but you have to be realistic."
And I'm sorry, but you've got to just sit there and go, "Logan, what the fuck are you talking about? Never look for a fight, you fucking liar."
Right, and this is why I love Dogman's, at least the reading in the book here. I don't know how Pacey deliver it, but just the way it's how it's written is literally Dogman. I can just imagine with his teeth all gritted, just saying like, "Don't even bother."
Oh, so good.
And
I love Dogman just finally, after all this time, like we've all been shouting at the Dogman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dogman idolizes. I don't think there is a single chapter that goes by without the Dogman mentioning the Bloody Nine or Logan or something.
Yeah.
And he just absolutely idolizes him. And up until now, it's probably been the way that he kind of guides his life.
Okay.
In a way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's always thinking about gotta be realistic, and
I think that he looks up to Logan like a big brother because they grew up together. He's all that they had left. Like, we forget that Dogman lost his whole village too. So, you know, he's all he had. He was his brother. And so he made a lot of allowances and ignored a lot of things because of that, I think. And Dogman's loyal. So he's he always sees the best in people most of the time. And I think that's something to keep in mind. That's why he's put up with it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Logan tries to feed him some more bullshit by saying that he's trying to be a better man, but Dogman isn't really having it. He goes, "Oh, really? I don't see you trying that hard." And then he straight up flat out asks him, "Did you kill Tull?" And Logan is like, "Has Dow been talking shit?" And Dogman,
You want to go? You want to fight, bro? He instantly gets all aggressive.
Right. But and it's like, why would he even say that? Dow's in the north. Like, you know, however long the journey is from the north to the Union, what is that, Harrison? Like a month or so?
Yeah, it's about. They talk about how it's about a month. Yeah, at least
right,
it's about 2 weeks or something. At least.
Right. Maybe Logan's talking about when they were still in the north, that Dow was probably like out there, you know, spreading quote unquote rumors. Anyway, you know, Dogman says, "Never mind who said what. Did you kill him or did you not?" It's not, you know, a hard question to answer. It's either yes or no. And Logan kind of makes this noise that's between a cry or a laugh, couldn't really tell, but he says that he doesn't know what he did. And then Dogman's getting fed up with this. He goes, "Don't know? What use is don't know? Is that what you'll say after you stabbed me through the back when I'm trying to save your worthless life?"
I mean, Harrison, you laugh, but have you not felt that way? You know, everybody feels that way at some point where they just don't know what to feel and something just comes out.
Well, it's not a feeling, though, is it, though? It's not a feeling. Dogman's right. Did you kill him or did you not?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And Logan is definitely not in the right here at all. But Logan is just as confused as Dogman is.
I think that Logan knows exactly what he did, but to admit it would be he does this thing where he likes to admit to himself and like act like he's being better, like he just did. Like, oh yeah, I'm trying to be better man, Dogman. I'm trying to be a better man, but like Dogman calls him out straight up. And I remember first hearing this and realizing, you know what? You know, you see so much from Logan's perspective that you completely forget that, yeah, Logan's not trying that very hard. We've talked about it a lot in the podcast, but it's only because we've read the series multiple times. But like the first time you read it, you're like, oh, that's a good point. He hasn't really tried that hard, has he?
Right.
Maybe with Logan and Pharaoh. I mean with Pharaoh and Giselle, but
Yep.
So, I mean, I know what you're saying, George. Like, yeah, he's feeling a lot of emotions. He doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know for sure himself, probably because of the Bloody Nine, and we're not sure how that interaction is. But I still like he could give a better answer than I don't know about the death of his friend. You know,
right?
I mean, but every single time that Logan has brought up these episodes, he's always phrased it as, "I don't remember what happened." Like the first time, like, "Oh, I was playing with a friend, and then I woke up and he was dead."
Yeah, he did say that. Yeah,
that's true. But he does know what happened. He does know whose hands did it.
Yeah, well, I remember after you know, when they buried Tull, he wasn't, and from his perspective, even he wasn't clear. But again, I would think, you know, Logan's what we would call an unreliable narrator. And
I absolutely disagree. I don't think there's any unreliable narration in the story.
Well, I mean, but Logan, I mean, from the fact that we see from his perspective, he loses control. And then obviously there's debate about this, and we really can only talk about it on spoiler episodes or when we cover a certain other book. Okay. But as far as we know from his perspective that he doesn't remember things like Harrison says. Like when the Bloody Nine comes about, it's very a vague recollection. Kind of sees faces like swim in and out of consciousness, and then he supposedly has to fight against the Bloody Nine, not to stab Dogman, or even like not kill Pharaoh in the first book, if you remember.
Mhm.
So,
and I'm sure that's far and beyond any kind of normal mental illness where.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. We don't know what it is yet now at this point. Well, kind of.
I mean, I'm sure right now, at like one chapter to go of the first trilogy, we can try to start some conjecture.
Right. Well, I mean, so a lot of people think it's a mental illness. Some people think it's a supernatural entity that kind of comes about. Other people think it's an excuse for Logan to really tap into the bloodlust that he feels so deeply. Go ahead, George.
And I think this is exactly what I was trying to talk about, is that Joe loves to leave this up to interpretation. Like I saw on the subreddit on the First Law the other day, it's basically like every single transcript of Joe talking about what the Bloody Nine is, and every single time somebody asks him, he's just like, well, you decide for yourself.
Yeah.
Because it isn't,
It could be to a certain degree, right? Like it's like a whole like conversation that Joe is having. Like the whole point is not knowing. The whole point is not knowing what it actually is. It's like, we all do things for reasons we don't know and understand. And it's up to us to actually understand it and understand ourselves. And part of that is, how others perceive us. And I think he's done a good job at making it that part of the entire narrative is how people see you and how you see yourself. And Logan is like the epitome of that. It's like you can be a certain way to certain people and different to other people, and then you're to yourself completely different. And then what your actions and what you're going for are completely different. So it could be, the whole point of it is that you're not supposed to know because Joe doesn't know. Because when he was writing it, he was thinking of it as an example for himself on actions and what the right thing to do is. There is a right thing to do, and Logan's not exactly doing that. But we do those things all the time that Logan does.
Mm-hmm.
Just maybe not so violent.
Yeah, maybe not in scale, but in meaning.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. I think that is so... And, I could talk about this 5-minute chapter for literally... forever, because it's just so fascinating, the little kind of intricacies that go on between Logan and Dogman here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so going back to the chapter read through, Dogman says, what will happen? Is that what you're going to say? After you stab me in the back, me trying to save your worthless life. And Logan at first has we could say a shameful reaction to this. He says maybe it will. He's not sure. But then he looks back at Dogman, and he looks at him, like it says, his eyes slid back up to the Dogman's and stuck there hard. And then Logan gets, a little mean here. I don't know about mean, but he goes, but that's the price, ain't it? You know what I am. You could have picked a different man to follow. And then he just walks away. And it's like, oh, damn.
What a dick.
Oh, yeah. That's also true.
Yeah. And Dogman just looking off, after him, and then Red Hat walks up to Dogman, is looking at Logan too, and then Red Hat says that he never believed the stories that they told about the Bloody Nine, that it was all bluster, but he believes them now, and that he heard that that Logan killed Crummick Ephael's son in the Battle of the High Places, carved him as you would crush a beetle for no reason.
Oh yeah. And I'd just like to point out, I love Stephen Pacey's voice for Red Hat, because it's very oh, hello, how's it going? That Bloody Nine guy. He's just the worst monster that has ever lived.
Yeah,
it's just absolutely comedic, the pinnacle of comedic genius there.
That's a great voice. It sounds like and. Like what you just said, George, is that Red Hat says that right there is a man that doesn't care for anything, and he doesn't think there's a man worse in the whole North, not even Bethod. That's an evil bastard, if there ever was one. And then apparently, not necessarily the right thing to say to Dogman, because I guess he thought he was chumming up to Dogman, but nope. Dogman gets right up in his face and says, "Man, who the fuck made you to judge people?" And Red Hat's confused. He's like, I'm just saying. I mean, I thought we thought the same thing." And Dogman says, "Nuh-uh, you need a fucking mind bigger than a pea to hold something in it, and you're lacking the equipment, idiot. You wouldn't know a good man from an evil if an evil one, if he pissed on you."
And there's the Dogman right there, loyal to the bone. Despite the fact that he's just sworn off Logan to his face, he will still defend him.
Yeah, and Red Hat's kind of like, okay, I guess I got the wrong idea, and he just kind of, walks away. And then Dogman is like watching him go, and now he's just angry with himself because he's mad at everybody, he's mad at nobody, he's mad at himself, and he just takes a long breath and just kind of like looks down at Grimm's grave, and he wonders himself if he know a good man from an evil one anymore. And then he wondered what the difference was anyway. And he just stood there thinking about how things used to be better. And that's the end of the chapter.
Don't we all?
And that's the end of the chapter. So, how would you rate this, fellas?
Oh, you first, Jeff.
Well, very short chapters, and it's fun. When I say fun, I mean it's a good read.
Yeah,
yeah, we did. It was so funny.
Yeah.
Laugh my ass off the whole time.
It was a good read. We get we're slowly completing the whole picture soon of Logan. From the especially from the Dogman's perspective, we see Dogman being loyal to the bone even after kind of just being despondent with how Logan's been going about things and how things aren't really changing. But what was it, like 3 pages? I'll give it a 4 out of 9 fingers.
4?
It's not that it's just a short chapter. It's a match. It's very, very short.
I think just for the revelation of Dogman's sort of flip from I know what's going on and I know what the world is like to what the fuck is going on.
Mm-hmm.
Just that one perspective shift that you get through this chapter earns it a 9 out of 9.
I really like this one, George.
Yeah, wow. Okay, good for you. Well, Harrison, you?
I definitely enjoy it. I really like how I think this chapter says, although people focus on Logan a lot, but I think this chapter says more about Dogman than it does Logan. Mm-hmm. Like, despite what he says there, Dogman I don't think it's simply as he's just loyal either. I think that Dogman, why is Dogman a good man? Because he doesn't see evil and good. He has no enemies. They're all just people to him. So in his mind, Red Hat says that thing to him, yeah, Logan's a bastard, but he's still his friend, not because of loyalty, but because he knows who Logan is. He knows, despite the fact that Bethod knows who Logan is, so does Dogman. And so Dogman knows that Logan is not all bad, and so I think it's super interesting. So but then again, it really is just like 3 pages, so it's one of the shortest chapters in the book. I'm gonna go ahead and give it, I think, a 7 out of 9.
Okay, all right.
It's an even spread, at least.
just about. So it's a good one. So we'll move on to our next segment, which is our community interaction segment. Harrison, take it away. This is your baby.
Yes, I am trying to keep up with the pulse again, like I said last week. So this week, follow up with the, kind of favorite heartwarming scene, and moving on to Before They Hanged. I put down as many as I could think of. There are more inside this book than there are inside the first one, so it was a little harder to kind of pick and choose. But I put down 3 Trees Send-Off for obvious reasons. Somebody pointed this out in the last video. Pike swinging fealty to West was a heartwarming moment, which I definitely think is underrated, and it's very important for Pike's character. So that's on there. Pharaoh and Logan cuddling. That's kind of a general Pharaoh and Logan thing. I didn't want to say fucking because I didn't want everybody to be like, say what? I've never read the book. Oh my god, I can't believe they have sex.
You just got us demonetized, Harrison. Fuck's sake.
Oh no. And then Giselle getting taken care of after his injury, and then Glockta helping Artie after returning from Dagaska. Three Trees send off 1, with Glockta helping Artie coming in second, which I didn't expect, and then Giselle getting taken care of, and then Farrah and Logan, and then Pike. Out of those, what do you guys think? Would you guys agree with the poll?
Definitely for me, it's got to be when this actually didn't come up, but when Gyllenhaal insists that he goes into battle when West is trying to send him away.
Oh, that is a good spot. I like that one. Yeah.
And I just love how earnest he is. He's just so naive, and he's just such a pure soul. He's too good for the world of Circle of the World, I think.
That's a good one. Jeffrey?
It is between Three Trees' send-off and Glockta helping Artie. But I think that Three Trees, that whole thing wasn't so heartwarming, to be honest. Like, it's
heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking. So I'm going Glockta helping Artie.
I like it. Somebody mentioned the Giselle thing. And they said that was great. Somebody said nothing could ever beat the squelching action in the wilderness.
I mean, you can see that as relatively heartwarming. I mean Farrah and Logan probably hadn't fucked for like a year, right?
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, two people who haven't fucked for a year, fucking that's pretty heartwarming, right?
Yeah. And then Kroger McGee, he's been around a while. He also said, I voted for Glockta scene, but I also think Farrah sticking up for Logan was heartwarming in its own way. So he's a killing. So he's a killer. So fucking what? I love that part as well, around the campfire. I totally forgot about that. So that's a really nice scene, I think.
It is.
So
that is really good. I'm pretty sure she sticks up for him several times as well.
I think it's the most significant part.
Yeah. It is the most. Yeah, it is.
But man, we can make a whole episode out of that.
Jeffrey, back to you.
The love story that never was. So we'll move on to our next chapter read through. Harrison, thank you for that. And it's Not What You Wanted. And we start off this chapter from the perspective of our arch lector, or Glockta, and he's in bed just having, just waking up from a nice dream, apparently, until he realizes he wasn't dreaming. He is just actually feeling an immense amount of pain, as usual. His neck's all fucked up, his legs all fucked up, his arm, everything's all fucked up, as usual, and he's just in so much pain, even in his spine, that he starts, obviously screaming for Barnum, right?
This is the last time we're going to be able to do this. Barnum!
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 Barnum! And then, we hear that, somebody's, hurrying to the door, and, and the lock is scraping, and then, Glockta's mad. He's like, it's locked, you fucking idiot. But then, he's surprised when the door actually just opened. I guess that, there was a key made, and the door opens, and it's Artie, and it's not Barnum. So no old wrinkled hands on Glockta this time.
And Glockta is just fucking horrified, isn't he? Straight away, he's like, "Oh my god, how dare she come here?
Yeah, he's like,
see me in my vulnerable state."
Yeah, he immediately yells at her to get out. She just simply says nope, and then she just grabs the blanket and tears it away. And then Glockta kind of just like freezes, and he's like, "Oh my god, she's gonna be like disgusted, shocked. She's gonna be like, oh, she shouldn't have married me." But then all she did was just kind of like look at the leg, and then started pressing her thumbs into his thigh, the one that was like heavily damaged, torture, huh?
Well, if your muscle spasming, all you need is a massage, really.
Right, yeah, so she starts massaging his thigh, and
in other words, she's exactly what he needs.
Yeah, yes, she is. And he starts off by about to curse her out. He's like, "You fucking," and then he kind of just
I feel like he actually stopped it, like he was gonna call her name, and he's like, "No, I can't call Artie that." And then he felt the relief.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought was gonna happen. And then there's a moment, and then he kind of just, he's very honest, and he says that he didn't want her to see him like this. And, Artie says, you know what? Too bad, boy. We're married, right? So we're one body now. And, he's being self-deprecating here, where he says that he got the better part of that deal, as in that Artie is obviously, healthy and everything.
Well, I
But
think he meant in every way, and
right,
he's not wrong.
right. No, he's not wrong. But, Artie was, she says that, she got her life, right? Because she knows
Yeah.
the deal of the whole marriage. And he knows, he feels for her in some kind of way, because it's not the kind of life that most women would want. And he says that he knows that he's not what she wanted as a husband. And she jokes that she always dreamed of a man that she could dance with, but that perhaps Glockta actually suits her better. Dreams are for children, and the both of them are grown-ups. And Glockta still feels bad. He's like, you should not have to do this, though. But then Artie grabs his face, like, in her hand, squeezes his cheeks, stares at him right in the eyes, like, I want to do it. I need to do something. I want to be useful. I want someone to need me. Do you understand?
I love how this is so earned as well.
Yeah.
Like this relationship has been building up for so long, since, halfway through before they're hanged. Mm-hmm. They're constantly talking, and they get each other like nobody else does.
Right. And what Artie says here, right, about the desire of wanting to be useful, wanting someone to need her, that's something that we saw that being bandied about since the first book, when we first met Artie, and she was bored walking around the Agrion. Nobody wanted to talk to her, or she felt very restless. She felt like a fish out of water, And here she can actually be of use. She's important to somebody besides Column West. He had just not only beat the shit out of her, he went off to war. So
and hell, isn't that important for everybody? Like, everybody feels the need to be important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At least to somebody or something.
Absolutely. So he understands. He tells her yes, that he understands, and then he asks her, "Where's Barnum?" And
Barnum.
And then she tells him that apparently she arranged for Barnum to have the mornings off, that she will be doing this from now on, and that she also told him to move her bed in there as well, in that same room. And Glock is about to, I guess, object in some way, but then she cuts him off and says, like, "Are you telling me I can't even sleep in the same room as my husband?" And she's like putting a lot more pressure now on that thigh, and he's like, okay. But then her massage is really doing a lot of good for him right now, and he feels like it's almost comfortable, right? Just the touch, just everything, and he's tearing up, if I'm not mistaken here, and. Mm-hmm. And he says that he doesn't deserve this, and she says no one gets what they deserve. Now, when he says he doesn't deserve this, he doesn't mean the pain. I think he's saying he doesn't deserve Artie's care, her.
Absolutely, Jeff.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
He's definitely being self-deprecating here. He's saying, he's an awful person in his own mind, and he doesn't deserve to have happiness.
Right. Which, to be fair, it doesn't. That's not a hard thing to parse from reading this. It's pretty obvious that's what it is. But
yeah, of course, yeah.
Right. Some people, I guess, would think, oh, he doesn't deserve the pain. I don't know, but it's And Artie's.
I mean, you could read it that way. You could definitely read it that way.
You could. But I mean, I think a man like Glockta, in some way, well, for the most part, probably would have gotten over it. But not really, if we think about it. The man always bitches about stairs. He always uses his time at being tortured as like a nice little exposition dump sometimes, a nice little villainous speech. The kind.
I do love his inner monologue here, where he's like, "How long ago since a woman looked at me with anything other than horror?"
Yeah, right.
Since a woman touched me with anything but violence, which is true, because nobody, I think Fatari beat the shit out of him in the first book, and then Carla Danida slapped him across the face at some point in the second book. No,
she didn't slap him.
She didn't slap him.
No,
but he literally hasn't been touched by anybody.
No, yeah, Pharaoh almost drowned him.
Yeah, except Barnum.
Barnum has always been loyal.
Barnum knows the way
Barnum
around
has
Barnum.
been his only comfort.
Yeah, what'd you say, Harrison?
I was just saying, Barnum knows his way around Gloctus.
Oh, yes, he does.
He's
knows
made a
his-
career out of it.
Let's just say, him screaming Barnum may not be the only time he screams Barnum. Yeah, Barnum.
Oh God!
Anyways, did not mean to go down that route.
Well, we just did. All right. So that was
to end off on that part. My only thing I want to say is, what a woman!
What a woman,
Oh,
Artie.
God, yeah.
Oh gosh, what a champ, right? Artie is such a champ.
And for just the fact that this is going to be a theme in this chapter, so I'll keep it short. So this is kind of what women are expected to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so Artie just kind of like steps up to what, she knows because of the kid and the all the expectations from that, that she needs to kind of step up and fulfill her role just to live at this point. I think she's smart enough to realise that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, this is just as political as anything else. But let's go on.
Yep. So, after she says that nobody gets what they deserve, it's a bit of a break, and we're back in Gloctus' perspective, and this time we are in Queen Therese's bedchambers. And he, is looking around, and he introduces, and it's just Queen Therese and her one friend by the window. And
a cockroach crawling into her regal presence.
Yeah. And he introduces himself as Glocta, the new Watch Lector, and then she immediately is just like, oh, the cripple. And why do you disrupt my afternoon? You find no criminals here. And Glocta's like, I appreciate the directness here. And then he kind of looks at the other woman and he goes, well, it's a thing I need to talk to you about. That's probably better we talk about this alone, privately. And Therese says the Countess Chalair, who's the lady by the window, has been her friend since birth. There is nothing you can say to me that she cannot hear. And the Countess is just staring at Glocta with just a tad bit less displeasure than the Queen. So they're just both straight up, just staring disrespect into Glocta's face right now, right? And then Glocta's like, all right, well, okay. No easy way to say it, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It's come to my attention that you have not been performing your duties as a wife. She is pissed at this. She goes, how fucking dare you? That's none of your beeswax. And he goes, listen, I'm sorry, but it is, heirs for the king are very important, the future of the state and all that. And she is tight. She's just upset, it's insufferable that she must eat the union's disgusting food. It's got to be, it's got to be a parallel to British food. And she must tolerate the dreadful weather, parallel to British weather.
Well, ironically, though, that's actually hilarious because it is known that Adjua actually has pretty decent weather. Like, it's actually, you have a hot summer and, they don't get a lot of snow really most of the time. But, like, we all know that Talons is like a squalor. So it's actually really funny that she says that. She's from Talons, which is like always gloomy, sad, rainy weather. And she's like,
wait,
God, I hate this weather.
She lives in the fucking in the palace though, doesn't she?
Oh, yeah. Fartazano? Yeah, but it's in the same region. It's in the same region though.
Wait, and I think
but if you go 5 miles out of a city, you'll see the difference.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, and I also think that Sapani is the gloomy city in Styria. I don't remember Talons being gloomy.
I do remember it being described as like quite, poor and like lots of poverty and stuff like that.
Right. But if you're talking about weather, I'm talking about
Well, we'll see when we get to a certain chapter. We'll discuss. We'll revisit this.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, so she's like, I like how she says that she must smile at the rambling mutterings of your idiot king, which is her husband. She is kept prisoner here. And then he looks around at the beautiful, furnishings and all this. And he goes, yeah, believe me, this is not what a prison looks like. And then she goes, there are many different kinds of prisons. And he goes, listen, I've learned to live with worse, and so have others. And then she And then she goes, to share my bed with some disgusting bastard, some scarred son of who knows what, to have some stinking hairy man pawing at me in the night, which I take offense to because I'm a hairy man.
That is the most telling line right there.
Right. And then she goes, "It is not to be borne." And then she's about to start crying. She's tearing up. Then the Countess Schiller, she rushes forward, tries to comfort her. She's like, get out, you cripple, and never come back. You have upset Her Majesty. And Glockta, at first he starts off, he goes, yeah, I have a gift for it. One reason why I'm so, widely hated. And, well, hold on. And he's looking at these two. And he's looking at the touch, and he's like, "It's very comforting, it's soothing, it's protective."
Very
Wait
intimate.
a minute. Yeah, it's a little too intimate, a little too familiar. It's almost like they're And then he just straight up says it. He goes, "You don't have much use for men, do you?" And they both go like, and then Therese, she goes, "I will have your meaning." But Glockta, in his mind's eye, he says that her voice was shrill, almost panicked. And then he says to her, "I think you know my meaning well enough." And he goes, "My task is made a great deal easier." He goes, it's like, "Help, please." And he snaps his fingers or so. Two giant practicals come in. And now the dynamic has changed. And then Therese is like, "Oh, you wouldn't dare touch me. And he goes, "Of course. I'm not even the one that's trying to, he says, no. I don't think it's going to be necessary, but we'll see how it goes." And he just points at the Countess and he goes, "Seize her." And now everyone's like, uh-oh. And then the two practicals start making their way forward. One of them moves a chair out of the way with exaggerated care. So I'm just picturing him picking up a chair very gently and turning to the side and setting it down.
That's very a bit slapstick there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And then, she, the queen, Therese is like, "No," and then Glockta's like, "Yes," and then the two women are, they're backing away, they're holding, and Therese is trying to shield the Countess, and then Glockta tells her to, take her, but don't leave any marks on the queen, possibly if you can. And then Therese is like, she's losing her, she's upset, rightfully so. She, she says that she'll have everyone's heads for it, and then she starts mentioning her father. But Glockta goes, "Yeah, he's on his way back to Talons, and we both can be sure that he doesn't need to. He's not going to start a war over this one person." So you're bought and paid for, and Duke Orso doesn't look like the kind of guy that's going to renege on a deal. So the four of them, the two practicals and the two women, are doing like this little clumsy, like George said, slapstick comedy-esque, like where they're trying to like get it, and then finally one practical is able to get behind them and grab the Countess and then pull her away, and then boom boom, like start arresting her, while the other practical, without really touching the queen, is kind of just like standing in front of her and like hurting her in the corner. Imagine, if you will, if you're familiar with the game of basketball, getting boxed out, just, posted up, just you ain't getting it. So
I don't understand it, but I'm sure many of our athletic viewers will.
Probably. And so then, they black bagged her, boom, and they just keep her out of the way. And then the practical leaves the queen. He gets away from the queen. He puts the chair back where he found it, and then they leave. And then Therese is screaming at him, and she's like, "Curse you! Curse you!" And then Glockta goes, "Look." Oh, well, she says, if any harm comes to her, right? That she's about to like make some kind of threat. But Glockta cuts her off and says, "It's not going to come to that, because you have the means of her deliverance within your grasp." So Therese is kind of like, "What do I need to do?" And then all Glockta says simply is, "Fuck." It's like, fuck and have kids. He will give the Countess 7 days in the darkness without being bothered. But if at the end of that time he doesn't hear that the Queen Therese has set the king's cock on fire every night, he will introduce her to his practicals. He will introduce the Countess to his practicals. Then, veiled implied threats of terrible, terrible shit there. And then Therese she's horrified by this, and this is a new low even for Glocta. And then she asks him though, if she does as he asks, then Glocta says that she'll be kept safe and sound, and that once she's, that you can verify that she's with child, that she's pregnant, then he'll bring the Countess back to her, and things can be as they are now during the time she's here. But the goal is 2 boys as heirs, 2 girls to marry off, and then they can be done with one another, and then the king can find his entertainment elsewhere. She's rightfully upset because she says that this will take years, and then he says that you can get it done in 3 or 4 if you really write him hard, and you might find it makes everyone's lives easier if you at least pretend to enjoy it. And she says like, "What, pretend it?" And he goes, "Yeah, the more you seem to like it, the quicker it will be over."
No, this one is actually, for how horrible Glock is being, this line that he does here is absolutely hilarious. Because he's not wrong. It's not that hard to enjoy it. Watch, I'll show you how. Basically, he doesn't say that. He goes, "Oh, right there."
Don't stop. He says, even a lie of her experience, you have no difficulty doing it. And then he does feel some sort of guilt. He feels like a tiny little nagging of guilt, somewhere.
But for all the Glocks has done, like, come on.
Yeah, I know.
He even says this is a new low, but even then, just a little tiny pang of guilt.
Mm-hmm. Just a tiny pang, but he wipes it away in a way. And then but he does, I guess he uses that little tiny sliver of guilt to kind of, he takes a step forward and towards her, and says like, "Listen, I hope you understand, like, really the alternative." He's trying to, like, "Do you understand the gravity of the situation?" And then she goes, "Yes." She understands, and she begs him to not hurt her. And then he says, that she has his word, and she will only have the best of treatment for the Countess Chalier, and do the same for your husband. So there's a bit of a break, and then now we're in Giselle's perspective, and he's in his bedchamber, and he's just sitting in the darkness. Well, there's a fire going on the hearth, and he's just thinking about all the twists and turns his life has taken, and he is just like, "I am here all by myself." But then he hears a door creak open, and, well, don't really know how to go about it, but it's Therese. She walks in.
Yeah, it's basically, well, it's exactly what you'd expect after that conversation.
Yeah. And we like to go into detail on these things most of the time because they're fun, and
but this one is a little uncomfortable because clearly this is blackmail and not the best thing. To Giselle's credit, he's completely fucking oblivious as always, so it's not like he's doing something wrong here.
But he is as gentle you can be in this kind of situation if you're unaware of what's happening, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Giselle really shows his true kind of colors here.
Right.
I mean, he is oblivious, and the way that, especially when he goes, "Oh, you never would have thought she might have been a virgin," and that's his kind of first thought to her being sort of reluctant.
Right. Yeah,
it's a little bit. It does give you the bit of the ick, right?
Yeah, it does. And and she, it really sucks for Therese a lot.
Oh, it's awful. It's awful.
And so it's definitely not something. It's definitely one of the lowest points in that sort of way in the trilogy. So props to Giselle for being as gentle as he can be and for being ignorant. And the thing to Giselle's sake, his part is if Therese told him about her situation, he probably would have tried to find a different way to go about the entire situation.
Yeah.
And so, but anyways, they obviously, perform the devil's tango as implied. But in this instance, we're not going to really talk the details. It kind of makes us all uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The devil's tango.
Devil's tango. That's that homeschool American idiom right there. Let's just bullet points. She walks in. She just says that she's sorry for the way she's treated him, for the things that she's said. And she's like, there's tears in her eyes, and Giselle's like, oh no, listen, it's okay. I'm just as much as a prisoner in this as you are. But he doesn't realize just how much from her perspective. And then that they just want to, is there a way that they could just make the best of it? Maybe just care for one another. He did say this. He says, we have no one else, either of us. Now,
that's not true.
But
he doesn't know that.
Right, he doesn't know that. And so that's Therese's that's her whole reason for even doing this. So and then like George said, there's a moment where she kind of flinches from his touch real quick, and she says that she doesn't have experience with men, and Giselle thinks, like you said, it all clicks. She is so he
nervous.
Nervous, yeah, exactly. So then and luckily Joe doesn't go into too much detail here. Thank the Lord. And then
we move on.
So we have another bit of a break, and then we are just coming to the end of a closed council meeting, and Glocta, is just like, that's it, folks. That'll be all. Yibbity. And then he waits and he looks for it. He's everyone filing out until he looks and he sees Hoff just kind of like hanging behind, just chilling, and then he goes, well, imagine my surprise to hear of your marriage. And Glocta's like, yes, a swift and understated ceremony, young love, you understand. Sorry if the lack of invitation offended you. He's like, Hoff is like, an invitation? Fucking invitation? That's not what we talked about. And then Glocta kind of goes, I think we have a misunderstanding. Our mutual friend, a.k.a. Bias, a.k.a. genocidal wizard, left him in charge. Nobody else. So, and he deems it necessary that the closed council speaks with one voice, and that voice just happens to be Glocta. So yeah, and then Hoff is like, yeah, okay, I get that, but, and then here we get, a thing that Glocta has, like I've kind of pointed out, obviously, many times throughout these books. Glocta does a thing where he talks about how much pain he had went through, all the torture he gone through, and how it just grinds out any sort of sympathy, any kind of happiness.
This is the culmination of it, right? This is the speech. This is Glocta's speech. This is what he's been practicing for the last 3 books.
It's basically his whole "I've been to the camp" situation. You know what I mean?
Did you hear that? I grew up in the camps.
Anyways, moving on. We'll deal with that later.
Right. So he says all this stuff, and then Hoff is like, "Yeah, okay, I get all that, but I don't see what's the point here. What's the relevance?" And then he goes, "Listen, just knowing all that, knowing what I am, knowing what I have endured, what I endure on a daily basis." Do you think there's anything in this world that I'm scared of? And do you think there's anything that I won't do? Do you think that it would be smart for a man to stand where you are right now and to make threats against my wife, against my unborn child? And then Hoff is like, wait, no threat was, no, it's not what I'm saying. And,
can I do this bit, Jeff?
Go ahead.
And he goes, that would simply not do, Lord Hoff. Simply would not do. At the very slightest breath of violence against them, why? I would not wish even for you to even imagine a humane horror of my response. And it's just chilling. This whole fucking monologue is just horrific.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going, Jeff.
And he gets closer to Hoff, and he says that he will not permit any further discussion of this issue. He won't even permit even the rumor that there might be an issue, ever. It simply would not do for an eyeless, tongueless, faceless, fingerless, cockless bag of meat to be sitting on your chair in the closed council. Because who else would drink all the wine?
I love that he's degrading even in his last statement.
Mm-hmm. And then, we get another break, and then... we get another break, and then it's Giselle and Glocta, and they're chilling. We're in Giselle's perspective here, and
I think they're walking down the ruins of the Kingsway.
Yeah, and he's looking, Giselle's talking out loud. He's like, it's going to take time, of course, but a lot of the rubble's already cleared. But the repair of some of the lightly damaged buildings was already started, and we're going to rebuild the Agriant more glorious than ever. He's made it his highest priority. And Glock is like, and therefore it's mine as well, and of your close counsel as well. And then he goes, might I ask about the health of your wife, the queen? And Giselle, internally, he's like, oh, I don't really like talking about my personal business with this guy, especially. But whatever Glockta did, there has been a very dramatic improvement. And so Giselle, he spills the beans. He says there's a material change. I find now that she is a woman of almost insatiable appetites. And the Glockta's like, I am happy to know that my efforts have had a positive effect. And Giselle's like, oh, yes. Only there's still a certain sadness in her. Sometimes he hears her crying in the night, that she stands at the open window and she weeps for hours at a time. And goes,
that's it's so sad.
I know. And then Glockta kind of tried to passes it off. He's like, crying? Oh, maybe she's homesick. I think I always thought she's a much kinder, gentler spirit than she appears to be. And Giselle, again, to his to his credit, he's oblivious. He doesn't know, but he's like, she is such a gentle spirit. Maybe that Glockta's right. Maybe she is homesick. That maybe they can have the gardens of the palace redesigned to give mirror talons in some way,
which is very sweet, actually.
It is very sweet. He even says we can have the streams altered to be the likeness of their canals and stuff, and it is a very kind idea. Gesture from Giselle, even though he's completely unaware of the root cause of her sadness. He says yes, absolutely, I will talk to the royal gardener, and maybe I should talk to Her Majesty as well, just to see if I can make her not cry so much. It's like, oh god, he's gonna have another
enough Glockta, enough, the damage has been done.
And I love how that's completely unstated as well, like he doesn't actually go and then do it. It's just
we don't know.
Left up to the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Giselle goes, he would appreciate whatever he can do, and then he kind of like a little throwaway says, how's your own wife? Yeah. And then, but Glockta, he's like, she is a tremendous comfort to him, and he doesn't really know how he ever managed without her. And then, a bit of an awkward silence because, right? And then he says, he's been thinking about the idea of his. Giselle thinks about the tax on the banks, to pay for a new hospital near the docks, for those who cannot afford a surgeon. And here, we talk about Giselle. This is the kind of king he wants to be, where the most poor, the most, what he says, the most base or something, the more mean, the more base, the more they need our help. A king is only truly as rich as his poorest subject.
Which is something that he was taught by Baez, keep in mind.
Right. And then he says, maybe have the high justice draw something up. Something small to begin with, then we could go further. Free housing, perhaps. We should consider some other stuff. And then Glockta kind of has to interrupt him. He says, Your Majesty, I've spoken to our mutual friend about this.
It's like,
Baez is anti-communist.
It says you're a commie.
And then Giselle kind of is like, you have? And Glockta says, he's sorry, but that he's obliged to. And that he says that his friend is not enthusiastic, about the tax on the bank specifically, right? And then,
Giselle, why?
Yeah, I wonder. And then Giselle
I always actually kind of find it interesting that when you first read these three, you don't realize that Giselle doesn't know that Baez is in charge of Fallout in the Bog.
Yeah, he still doesn't. You're right. He does not know. So all this kind of hey, let's not bother the banks. Giselle's like, what the fuck? And then he asked Glockta, does he rule the union or I? But I like this. But they both knew the answer to that well enough. Then Glockta says, you're king, of course, but our mutual friend, we would not wish to disappoint him.
It's just that of course, isn't it? You're king, of course.
Of course.
And everybody goes, of course.
Yeah. But, Glockta, here tries to, I guess, be as empathetic here as possible. He goes neither one of them wants would want to encourage a visit to Adua from Baez, and Giselle's like, no, of course not. And then he gets a little closer and he whispers to him, he's like, look, perhaps in time we can find some funds for some small project, that he can't see everything, and what he does not see will not hurt him. He's sure that between the two of them, quietly they could do some good, but as of right now, not yet. And so we can see an inkling of Glocta wanting to potentially do some good here, and work with Giselle here. And then
sowing some seeds for some kind of large movement.
Yeah.
You always say that, George. Every time.
Every time. And then
no
Giselle,
spoilers,
Shut the fuck up, George. You goofy bastard.
Yeah, and so then Giselle says, nope, you're right, Glocta. You have a very good sense of these things. I don't want to don't do anything just do anything that will cause the very least offense, right? Do nothing that will cause the least offense, Please inform our mutual friend that his opinions will always be valued, and please tell him he can rely on me. Will you tell him that, please? And then he says, yes, I will tell him. Don't worry. He will be delighted to hear it. And Giselle goes, good. And then he kind of just realizing that, oh boy, he's kind of stuck. So that's the end of that chapter. Boys, how would you rate it?
This one's getting an 8 from me.
Ooh, okay.
Because this is fucking horrifying, right? Like, you can't imagine being the other side from Glocta the entire time. And it's just the same as every other perspective that we've had from Glocta. He's torturing people all the time. You can't imagine being on the other side of that. And you can't imagine being on the same side as Therese. But in a different way. Like, he's sort of using that same kind of, he's using pressure and he's using torture, but he's doing it in a more psychological and a more kind of power-driven way than he is doing it physically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's transferring those exact skills over, and it's actually horrifying to see that actually happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's just me. But that's it. I'll give it an 8.
Mm-hmm. Harrison?
I think I'm gonna give this one I think I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 9. I think it's really well written. It gives us an insane amount of insight into Therese, as we'll talk about here in just a second. But and I definitely am not in the camp of, oh, this is to remind us how bad Glocta is. I don't think that's the point of the chapter. And I'm not rating it just because of that. It just seems like it's a scene that it's the whole sequence, the whole section is a thing that needs to happen in order for the story to progress. But at the same time, I also feel that the Glocta arty scene makes up for the just kind of going through the motion scenes. So I'm kind of middle of the road, a little bit less on the end, but it definitely is difficult for me to get through that part, even though it's just part of the story. It's nothing against Joe at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 7 out of 9 fingers. It's a well written chapter. The material is a little difficult, especially in the Therese part, but in terms of everything that it's putting it's tying up the stories, and it's making a lot of sense as to why Therese has acted the way she's acted with Giselle in the past. We see a nice little the beginnings of a booming, blossoming relationship between Artie and Glocta, and we see Giselle, same thing with him and Glocta, at the end there, the signs of a possible burgeoning, maybe
brotherhood.
Maybe a slightly one-sided brotherhood.
Comradeship.
Yeah, I don't know about one-sidedness once we see it in future books, but definitely their relationship is going to be a lot better than it obviously was their dynamic. So for that, I'll give it a 7 and 9 fingers. Thank you for that, boys. Let's do our character spot. You want to take it away?
Yeah, so we've been saving Therese for this moment. We might mention her again in future books, but for now, obviously it is very sad what she has to go through here. I will say though, completely unrelated to the sexuality of the situation, that Therese is absolutely a bitch. She could totally be more understanding of Giselle's position to a certain degree. I'm not saying she has to owe him anything, but she can be a little bit less like bitchy towards him. Like, goddamn,
I'm
he is
glad you said it.
over the top. And this is completely unrelated to the sexuality part of it. Like, I understand she's upset, but she also is the one who said, I have to do this for my country. I'm doing this. She can't have her cake and eat it too. She can't sit there and act like she's better than all of them and then also marry Giselle. Like, yeah, she did it for her father, but like, you know, it's definitely a complicated situation. And Therese is very complex, like many of the show's characters. But that's what I think. She's definitely a bitch. It's terrible what she has to go through, though. So it's kind of understandable. But damn, girl, you could at least communicate a little better.
I mean, exactly. I mean, you can see it through a lens of like modern sexuality, like views and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, she's probably the most privileged person in the fucking world. She literally has no other duties but to just do this one thing. And again, I do understand, like, these days, like, views towards sexuality and things like that are more way more nuanced, and people just didn't get that kind of thing back then. So it was just like, yeah, you're a man, you've got to marry a woman and have kids, and if you're a woman, you've got to marry a man and have kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just separate. Honestly, for me, George, separate from the sexuality. She just was a little bit less harsh on Giselle and may communicate a little bit better. I don't think they'd be in this situation, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she could literally just have turned around to him on the wedding night and be like, yeah, by the way.
Yeah.
And just explained the whole thing. And, it would have been a lot better. Which is a fucking good relationship advice, guys. If you're struggling right now, just talk your way out of it. It's fine.
Yeah. She could have told Giselle, and maybe it would have helped the both of them get through it better. But I mean, like, you know, there's a reason why her and Shalir reacted so strongly at the very second that Glokta said, "Oh, you don't even need men, do you?" So, you know, obviously, I don't know. We don't know if, you know, if you're a sexual, if you're, you know, lesbian or what have you, that means that you're sent to the guillotine or something. But can imagine that they don't look favorably upon that.
I'm not. We're definitely, none of us are trying to say that Therese should be happy in your situation. And to be honest, I'm not even saying he should directly say how she feels about that. But if she just would have communicated a little bit better, maybe not directly about how her sexuality is, but like, you know, I'm not ready for this or whatever. Even aside from the sexuality, she's so hard as Therese as a whole. She's so harsh to Giselle, who is just trying to understand and be there for her and be good. I mean, he really is. I think,
and you're right.
I think
she immediately just rejects him and just goes, "Oh no, you're a pig, you're a bastard, you're bloody."
Yes,
exactly. Even though her granddad was a mercenary, you know.
Right? Yeah. If she was,
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. So if she was, to be honest, it's a completely aside from the sexuality. If she was less bitchy towards him, I think that they would have been much better off. Completely aside from the sexual part, that's a whole nother monster. And, you know, she's definitely getting the short end of the stick there, period. There's no way she's getting out of that one, you know, in a good way. So that part sucks for her, but it doesn't justify being terribly mean to somebody trying to do good. So.
Right, we can do a whole episode on this, so let's move on.
Yep, so that'll be it. That's our show, everyone. We want to thank you all for listening and supporting this podcast. As you know, this is a passion project for the three of us, so your support really does mean a lot.
Join us next week as we cover Loose Ends and Does the Devil Know He's the Devil?
And make sure you like, share, and comment on our post for a chance to win a copy of The Great Change and Other Lies.
And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any podcast app that you use. And please make sure to rate and review. Thank you all again for listening.
No one gets what they deserve.